Okay, so I want us to have a real conversation. What is blackness? I recently been inundated with trolls and or direct accounts from Drake's team and or himself, respectfully, in which there was a statement about he is black, and I replied through a journalistic lens and as one who is African American, as stating that he is quote unquote biracial. I think it's very important that we recognize when individuals are biracial because it means that you are literally discounting one race for the other. And in many instances, the races that take the hardest hit happen to be if the mother is white. And so, what people tend to do is utilize the race game. And we're seeing a lot of that in the entertainment ecosystem, particularly sports and entertainment, and it defines culture. And so that's where I come in. And so you have entertainment ecosystems that demand black aesthetics, and then you have equally so those who police the authenticity of what it means to be black. And a lot of organizations are doing that under various hashtags, right? We see that under hashtag HBA, among others. And so, but we do have the right, and I use that respectfully, to ask what is black. So, for those of us who have two parents, both of whom are African or of African descent, African American, African Canadian, etc., how do we define ourselves? If a person who's a Haley Berry, a Drake, uh, and a host of others could simply just say they're black, both having white mothers, but they can simply state that they're black. But for what purpose? Is there stating that they're black for the purposes of fitting into the corporate spaces that leverage hyper blackness, the throbe, for the sole purpose of monetization? So, respectfully, when a Halle Berry, then or now, would speak about what it means to be a black woman in Hollywood, or Mariah Carey would speak about what it means to be black musicians or artists, do we who come from two households or a household where there are two black parents, do we get to say, you're not black, you're biracial? We go back to 1997 and we think about what Tiger Woods was stating when he said he was Cabo Asian. And there were many people back then, the late Jesse Jackson, NAACP, Rainbow Coalition, the Nation of Islam, and a host of others who was angry at Tiger Woods for stating that he was not black, he was Cabo Asian. He wanted to recognize and respect the race, not nationality, but the race of his mother, who was a white Asian woman. He wanted to be able to say, I passed through the womb of a white Asian woman, a Cabo Asian, and my father is a black man. So I represent three races as far as he's concerned. And there were people who, particularly because at the time that he made the statement, he had now accepted the master's green jacket as the first quote unquote black man to do so. But now that he had attained that status, he was very eager to let the world know that I'm not black. But it was on the shoulders of blackness that he was able not simply to play golf in the manner in which he did, because he's a gifted, experienced, expert, and talented in the space of golf. But it was while he was on that journey of pursuing the masters that everyone around him, including he himself, was identifying himself strictly through the lens of being black and what it meant to be black and what it meant to accomplish the goal of being the first black man to win, or possibly to win at that time, the masters. Now, for those of us who know our history, know everything from the T that is used in golf was invented and patented by a black man, an African American, a Negro back then, right? And so we also know down to the golf club. And we know that we played the game well before the Masters ensued. The same be true with hockey. But what was unique for him is that in that space at that time, there had not been an African American or Black or Negro, respectively, who identified as such who would win and go on to win the Masters. And so for him to have waited till after he accomplished that feat, had the support of so many, opened new doors for others to say, hey, listen, I'm not black, I'm Caucasian. And to do it on a platform like Oprah Winfrey at the time, who was the queen of media, and to have her platform at that time meant that you were somebody. And to utilize that platform that had reached millions of people to announce to the world, I'm not black, I'm Caucasian. People were angry with him, but why? He was simply speaking his truth. But he was only speaking his truth after the corporate spaces had leveraged hyper-blackness. And it was a trope used for massive monetization, opening up sports camps, teaching people how to play golf. Even at the same time, they were trying to do the same in the spaces of tennis with the Williams girls later on, right? So the same be true. And so, wherein you have what's happening in the NBA, the same space of the Ball brothers, the Klay Thompson, and a host of others who have passed through the wounds of white women, identifying as being black. Temporarily, it is. The way people talk about Klay Thompson's and Megan the Stallion's relationship, that she was used to bring him into the culture, respectfully, because he had not been. He had not been represented as part of the culture. He's not the Draymond Green. He was not the Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors crew. So, in the space that he was in, right, people looked at him differently. They looked at him differently. He had passed through the wound of a white woman. So, for them, he was not black. But to connect with black culture, a Megan Thee Stallion, meant that somehow you fit in. And so, in the lyrics, Blackness, that is a reply to Drake, one of the things that is said as a lyrical is blackness cannot is not a reservation you check in. So you don't get to check in and check out of being black. You are who you are, biracial. But you get to tap into your father's identity, Aubrey, Drake, when it behooves you, when it's about optics. And so what we're stating is blackness cannot be an optic. But at the same time, one might say, well, then who are you all to police it? We're black people. Of course we get to police our race. Of course we get to be gatekeepers. And the thing I admire, even from the Jewish side of our family, and those who practice Judaism and those who are born under the ethnicity, respectfully, of being Sephardic Jews, is that they police and gatekeep the faith and who is and who's not also. Everyone else is doing it. But then when we make a decision to say we can do it, that becomes problematic. How? How is it problematic? Who are we if we can't say that we're black, or if we must state that we're black and we have two parents? So there's something wrong with the math there. If mother and father are black, and mother and father identify as black, and mother and father are descendants of Africa and African origins and descendants, excuse me, then how does the person who only has one black parent get to say that they're still black? To me, it's simple. You have to identify as biracial. Why do you refuse to recognize the white parent? That is a whole different conversation, right? No, we're going to bring that here, full circle. Why are these individuals refusing, at least publicly, to identify who their mothers are and to recognize who they are and to respect who they are? So when you think about someone like Drake, whose mother is white Jewish, and because there are black Jews, his mother is white Jewish, and who the mother of his child is white Jewish. So behind the scenes, you get to do that. So let's tie this into Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar has, utilized his platform as a black male of both black parents to come after respectfully Drake. But can Kendrick speak? Because Kendrick's wife, just like uh, Tariq Sneed, just like his wife, is biracial. His mother-in-law is white. So you have all these black men who are stating, well, we're black, we have black mothers and black fathers, playing the race card too in the space of sports, entertainment, and culture. trying to set the stage and control the narrative, but can you? Can you control the narrative, Kendrick Lamar, when your wife mother is white? And everybody want to paint her tomorrow. She's Albanian. No, 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 no. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. She's white. We're not bringing in what a person's ethnic or nationality is. It's just like the whites who are Spanish and Puerto Rican. It's I'm not black. I'm not white. I'm Dominican. I'm not black. I'm not white. I'm Puerto Rican. No, mama, you ignorant because those are your nationalities. What is the race that you claim and why? And so, there again, for optics, we're not simply allowing people to check in like blackness is a reservation. And it's critically important because when we look at other narratives in terms of, I like to refer to it as cultural tourism. We just travel this space when it benefits us. And no, you cannot do that. Black is not a reservation, you check in. And contrast in transactional blackness with authentic black and real experiences. And so, wherein you're lending yourself to the conversation, not simply sending Lisa Hampton Drake or your Drake Trobe, a post by Assata Shakur, a black female revolutionist, affirmation to determine who and what you are, as if you've been on the front line. No. As if you understand our experience. No. As if you can check black on the US Census, or as if you understand Boys in the Hood or Rockefeller sentences. Do you? Blackness is not pretentious. It's a lived experience. And it's not simply cornrows. It's the same conversation I tie into Ron Ball the Allen Iverson way, where you look at people like Griffin, RG3. You think because you have cornrows in your hair that somehow allows you to identify with blackness? No, there's no doubt. Black mother, black father. But you didn't marry black. You have a white wife. So you don't get to tell us about what it means to be black women in America. Your daughters are biracial. Their experiences are different. When she shows up to address a situation for them at school, I can promise you it's going to be dealt with differently than if my mother were to show up. No matter how high, yellow, light, bright, damn near white people said she was or is, right? The experiences is going to be different. And it was the same conversation I had when Halle Berry was saying, I won an Oscar. Yeah, you did. Monster Ball, go figure. But nevertheless, your experiences, Mariah Carey, your experiences, Halle Berry, the twins that used to play on The Sisters, the Maori girls, where you come from a diverse background, and there's a host of others. I'm just using those who are on a different platform for the purposes of bringing these points home. It's a different experience when your father shows up and he's Tia Mowry's dad than if our fathers showed up. There's a different experience if Drake mother showed up to address Aubrey's situation at school than other blacks in the same space. Even, and I give this point, even a Kendrick Lamar's mother. But there again, can Kendrick speak? No, I don't think his situation now is any different than Drake's. Because what he did want to tell people is his wife is biracial. Okay. Why did you hide that factor? And then the same thing with RG3, Griffin. Instead of them just coming out, my wife is white, what they do is they'll say, well, she's Albanian, she's Lithuanian. They start pulling these nationalities when nobody's asking about nationalities. For that matter, we're American. We're Canadian. But does that change the race? It does not. It's the same thing with Kim Kardashian. Everybody can sit there and try and play the game all they want. They're white girls. So for Kanye West to ended up in a circumstance like that, and Damian Thomas and a host of others who got played, it is what it is. Tristan, stop trying to hide behind this. It's no different than what people are dealing with. Bring it current to the New York Knicks, Jalen Brunson. It's like, well, my wife is Jewish. Okay, does that change the fact that she's white? Jalen? No, it does not. Jewish is not a race. It's an ethnic group for some, but really it was predicated upon a religious faith. Or if we can go deep, we can say one of the 12 or 13 tribes, if we're going to go deeper than that, of Israel. It doesn't change, right? That your wife is white, but she's white Jewish. There are black Jews, but she's a white Jewish girl. Let's recognize her for who she is and nothing different. And that's because you say she's Jewish. I mean, I never saw any postings of her in synagogue or, at Hanukkah or, Yom Kippur. I never seen any of that, not on your timeline or hers, but, it is what it is. So, again, we don't get to use these scapegoats. To define Blackness means to define lived experiences and to target how entertainment ecosystems swallow Black subcultures, even looking at TikTok. And I don't see any of you speaking on those. They want the rhythm but reject the reality. And what is the reality? It's not simply the ability to go onto a TikTok and watch a group of people dance, the Justin Bieber types, right? And then be able to monetize your platforms, be it YouTube or TikTok, without giving any recognition, acknowledgement for the culture that you appropriated. And there's a big difference between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation. Trust that. And then addressing the psychological concept of the hyper Black athlete, those who feel like they must do so much, like the Curry Irvin types, to let you understand what it means to be Black when you got girls who are light, bright, damn near white, Steph Curry types. But people don't realize both of Aisha Curry parents are of Black descent. Her mother is a Jamaican Canadian. Okay. She just happened to be of a fairer hue, even than the rest of her sisters. But does somebody like a Steph Curry feel like he has to constantly be in a position of proving himself? We think both of his parents are Black. Yeah, I said that respectfully. In light of recent developments that transpired during his mother's divorce. But we know that Sonia is the mother. We know that Sonia represents being a Black woman, and we know the dad is. But yeah, we believe both boys are. I'm being respectful. Just saying. But the hyper Black athlete, in terms of wanting people to think you down with the cause, like the LeBron James, and you have the likes of a Savannah. But we also know that you associate and assimilate on a romantic and a sexual level with women that were non-Black. Yeah, you did. Okay. So we can go down that avenue, and we can take it all the way back to the Michael Jordan era, where they were doing the very same thing, but theirs was different. They made it their business, and that's why a lot of us admire LeBron. Like, okay, but who gonna get the bag? The wife, the sister. Okay, but is that simple? Is that how it works? Because nowadays people get to see. It's no different than what's happening with Anthony Edwards, with the IG girl. One of them is not African American. The Alexandria DeRoches. And then you see the Scotty Barnes. And you see the Paul George. And then these become the very same athletes that try to pretend that they're doing so much for the community, that they're representing the culture. Because you could use words like brazy. Should you be using the word brazy, Scotty Barnes, and wearing red? I'm just asking. You know? Sports and music is multi-layered. They're multi-layered ecosystems. And so it's important that when you become the face card, the thing about Allen Iverson that was a little uniquely different was not simply in cornrows. It was who Allen Iverson was or who he wasn't. And so while a lot of people was about he represented the culture, he also was dating Tommy Hilfiger's daughter. And he also had two other white females that he rocked with. I'm just saying, you know, and was real quiet about it at a time when people did not want to be public because they wanted to find someone of his background that they could say represented the culture. Is there a difference between Blackness and culture? So when we keep saying they rep the culture, what really does that mean? The subcultures of hip hop, music, respectively, dress and style, but not the authentic lived experience. These spaces actively, commodify Black physical and creative labor because it's worth billions, actually trillions. If you look at the amount of money that is tied into Black consumerism, what it means to be Black in America, what does it mean to be Black around the world. Even when you look at the sale of Essence magazine to people on the continent of Africa itself, and how even they were utilizing the African American culture, the Black experience for profit. And what does it look like? When you have athletes like Colin Kaepernick and faced the blacklisting for breaking character, but did he? And you look at the mother of his child and the world that he lives in, all while talking Black and acting Black, the hyper Black male with the afro. Who is his biological parents? Respectfully, he was adopted. Was his biological parents African American? Were they Black? Were they of African descent? Or Middle Eastern? Like, who are they? We only know what we hear, but then we know what we see. And what we see and what we saw was a non Black woman to be the mother of his child. So, do we listen to him? Does he become the face card for Black America? Does he become the face card for a movement? The same, question comes up for rappers again, like Kendrick Lamar, who face industry pressure to act like characters, but he doesn't. But it's those who start out like Tiger. Tiger now is trying to move forward and do 80s music. He calls it his alter ego. But in essence, what he's telling us is that's really who he was. He wasn't never really trying to be that person who was down with the baggy pants and the Timberland boots and the tattoos. It's just not who he wanted to be. But he bought into the culture. He bought into that. The same way as Ye did, Kanye West. The guy that had the polo shirts and could rap like Chance the Rapper and kind of present themselves in a way that did not personify gang culture, but was gang a culture or was it really a lifestyle? It really was. Blue Da Vinci, y'all know we're working on the documentary Lyrical Legacy, the Anthony Jones story, which AKA is known as Wolf, who was murdered by Demetrius Flannery and Bull Height, along with two other individuals whose names we're going to withhold for the purposes of waiting for the documentary and what is going to come out of that. But Blue Da Vinci is an individual that was once associated with BMF as a brand, a music side, respectfully, but it also had another side to it, drug dealers. And they also served this quote unquote security muscle for the East and West Coast. And so he made a comment about him basically teaching Jeezy. Remind that him teaching Jeezy. Now, Wolf and them knew Jeezy, but we're going to listen to Blue right now. Blue says they had to teach Jeezy about wearing Dickies and Timberland boots. Really? Okay. But let's tie that into the industry trying to create an image of what they believe defined Black culture and hip hop. I'm going to use that statement just for the purposes of that right now. It is more developed within the scope of the documentary. But it's interesting because from Jeezy to Ye to the artists today, that's exactly how a lot of them feel. When you look at Lil Wayne, somebody who had a gift and a talent that all of a sudden him and Baby felt like they had to tattoo their entire face with drip drips. And then you wonder why he's never in any of the photos with Tony Braxton. I'm just saying, you know. So when creators speak on systemic history, the industry panics. And we saw that with Curry Irvin, a simple post of Jewish history through the lens of Black Hebrews that was televised and aired as a documentary through Jeff Bezos' Amazon Prime. And the only person who gets punished is Curry, and a way to silence him to the tune of almost a loss of $17 million, police and blackness in the NBA. It's interesting. So when you're online, like I am, and you're trying to confront trollers with specific who are deflecting and trying to tell me, focus on Drake's charity. Doesn't that sound familiar? It's where you have individuals who are non-Black who simply say, I give to the Black community, I donate to the organizations. Yeah, okay. I'll leave that for now. Explain how financial philanthropy is used to buy cultural immunity. I mean, I'm just asking. I think I responded to that in the song Blackness when I wrote the 1857 Dred Scott decision. You know, it's at 59 seconds in. So if you can listen to Blackness on one or two, you can get the 60-second version of it on the same platform, Spotify, or go to filterrim.com website, or you can go to YouTube. They play with our numbers there. We know it's a lot more than what they show us, but whatever. We're from a generation where we don't rely on social media for our marketing anyway. And I suggest to everyone, go back old school, tap into people from yesteryear who did it without social media. And that's how we've been doing it. So, we don't rely on that. And control, it should not use the one say control your masters. Yeah, control yours too, so they don't master you, right? Respectfully. So that being said, but we talk about from emancipation to the 1857 Dred Scott decision to emancipation, right? When you know our history and you understand the anchor of our history, you don't need to remind us that you make donations, because systemic oppression was never solved by superficial financial handouts. Never. It never was. True Blackness is built from within. It's not manufactured, and that's something that we say at point 031. And we conclude by asserting our role as an objective journalist. So I can't be boxed in either. So my points are and have already been made. And I wanted to have this opportunity to share that with you guys. But we love you, Drake. We really do. You, J. Cole, Barack Obama, but you're all biracial. So the person sending me, well, what about Barack Obama? What about J. Cole? What about him? J. Cole got a black girl, by the way. Or does he? Okay, yeah, he does. A wife. And so does Barack Obama, by the way. So their children will basically fall in line, but will love who you love. It's the same thing I said to a former NBA player, Kenny Anderson. He's always saying, well, my wife is Puerto Rican. Every time somebody comes at him that his wife is white, he's Puerto Rican. No, Kenny, according to the United States Census Bureau, let's look at what races are. And Puerto Rican is a nationality. And you say, well, the hell with the United States Census Bureau. Okay, Drake, the hell with them. But it still doesn't change the fact of race. Canada does the same thing. And you guys are protesting up there left and right. You want to do something constructive? Go after Centrum Property Management Group, Lamarck, for how they treat their people, their asset properties. If you want to bring awareness and utilize your blackness, utilize it in that capacity. Or what's happening with the students right there in your backyard in Toronto and Montreal. Okay? So thank you for joining me today on this episode. This is Lisa Hampton. Love is selflessly authentic, having all money, power, talent, opportunities now. And we're going to drop another teaser, but we're going to do it separate. But we're not going to combine it with this show, or maybe I will. Stick around. Coming up, two documentaries: Ron Ball, The Allen Iverson Way, and also Lyrical Legacy, Anthony Jones, aka Wolf. Thank you.